Monday, degenerates. What's going on, fight fans? Welcome back to the Die Hard MMA podcast. I'm your host, as always, your guy behind the camera here, Clint. And it is pay-per-view fight week. We've got my personal nemesis in action in the main event this week, Alex Pereira fight week. You guys know that I have just basically sent my entire life savings to my bookie trying to fade this guy. So let's see, we'll see what ends up happening this week. We'll see, because I've said a lot of things and I've basically been wrong ever since he made it to the UFC. So not my favorite fight week of all time. How is everybody doing in the chat? My guy Dream in the house. What is up, George Ray Pro, the Grateful Dude, Joe Free Salt Dart, Nonstop Philly, Louis Mack Jr. What's going on, everybody? Dix Insider, my man, cashing the 12-1 Patterson TKO play. Could not believe that myself, Dixon. Sam Patterson's my guy. I was this close to pulling the trigger, and I got spooked. I missed the line move. I didn't get the plus 250. He was like plus 180 by fight time, and I didn't want to chase the steam and get a worse number. And it's funny because I actually thought about the TKO myself and just chickened out on it. I'm a victim of Sal D'Amato and Chris Lee this week, you guys. Obviously not wearing the baby blues, as you can tell. No winning week here for me, and it came at the cost of not one but two split decisions that basically cost me my week. The anchor moves up to 6-1 all time. Chepe comes through like $1 million. Dude was incredible in there, and they scared the crap out of me because I don't know if you guys were watching, but there was this nosedive of line movement right before the fights kicked off where tons of money coming in on Ricardo Ramos, and I'm sitting here going, did Chepe like break his ankle on the way to the kit? What is happening right now? Somebody knows something. So thank goodness Chepe went out there, did the dang thing, performed it, and got the dub. Minnow Cop looking like he's going to be the next title contender. Lots of fun stuff happened this week, but we don't have time for a full-on recap. I can come on back around to that here a little bit later in the show. What we do have is a high-powered guest, one of my absolute favorite people in the MMA community to talk UFC fights with and about. UFC 313, folks, your guest is going to be none other than Luke Thomas. Luke, how you doing today, my guy?
What's up, dude? How are you? Nice to see you again. Sorry, I was reading something and you caught me off guard.
Oh, my bad, but I love the shirt. I love the TMNT Morning Combat. That's awesome.
So I'm doing it the wrong way here. Yeah. I got it's the old MK shirt from back in the Showtime days from Average Joe Art. Hit him up. He has all kinds of good stuff.
I love it. That's fantastic. You guys are doing good stuff with the designs and all that kind of stuff, man. Love it. Thank you for the time. Thank you for coming back. What did you think of last week's card? Anything like jump off the page at you?
Thought it was super dog shit. I thought it was real bad. There was a couple of decent fights on the card. I thought the opener was great. Obviously, the co-main ended up being about as good as I think that fight could have been. So take your victories where you can get them. Obviously, the Pinto knockout on Lane was incredible, really great. That was awesome. And listen, the main event wasn't like a disaster by any stretch of the imagination, but this was my major takeaway, and I'd be curious to see if you agree. Like, I get it. Almabayev was coming in on late notice. You just got to take what you get at that point. Fair enough. But, okay, Cop looks ready for a title shot. But I kind of felt like he was already ready for a title shot. Mm-hmm. And this one was just like, okay, yeah, this guy should get a title shot. But I didn't feel like, we really advanced anything on the chessboard. So, you know what it is. It's an Apex fight night, dude. What are you going to do? What are you going to do?
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more with you, man. I think the Brundage and Marquez fight was an absolute, banger. The judges got involved, and I feel like they got the Esteban Ribovics and Nasrat Haqparast wrong, personally. I felt like
my producer feels very much the same as you, yes.
Yeah, that was tough, especially for a guy that had a bet on, Esteban. But the Manel Cop situation, I've kind of been in that boat with you for a while now, is that he's pretty much the clear and obvious next guy. And Makayev really took the wind out of his sails, and then they cut him, and then he still didn't get the shot. And now he's had two meaningless fights, essentially, to kind of rebuild the hype, I guess, to get him back up there where he was supposed to be. And The eye poke situation puts an asterisk. There's always an asterisk with Manel Kopp. Like, he literally can't do anything without having a problem, whether it's weight missing, fouling, screaming obscenities on the microphone after the fight. Like, he finds a way to mess it up every time, man. I don't know why.
Still, I will say this. I am looking forward to the rematch with Pantoja, assuming that they make it, obviously. I do think that'll be a pretty good fight for as long as it lasts.
I'll agree. And they're flying people in from Asia at this point, trying to get Pantoja a warm body. So it's gotta be Manel Kopp at this point. I will look forward to that fight very, very much. But man, I went from being very firmly in the camp of Starboy is the next dude to I'm like, dang, I kind of feel like Pantoja has sold me at this point as being maybe the GOAT of this weight class.
Bro, I keep waiting for Pantoja to fall off, like after these wars that he's had, and I'm like, oh, okay, the next one you're going to see it, because I remember like distinctly when Carlos Condit fought Robbie Lawler. Lawler had the fight with McDonald, and then eventually had the fight with it may have been back to back. I can't remember the exact order, but eventually after the McDonald fight and then after the Carlos Condit fight. You're just never going to be the same after that. Dude, Pantoja has these wars, and he seems fine, and I don't get it. But, dude, you saw what he did against Asakura. He looked like $1 million, so let's see what happens.
Yep. I'm right there with you, man. And it's funny because that's a talking point that might pop its ugly head up a little later on for this card. Everybody, do me a favor, hit that like button if you haven't already. If you don't know Luke Thomas, you're living under a rock, but support him as well, please. Let's get on into UFC 313. Boy, that rolls off the tongue nicely this week. First fight of the night. We've got what looks to be a nice little put together one here that I wasn't ready for until I looked at Tapology. Chris Gutierrez is coming in here against John Castañeda. Sexy Mexi was supposed to fight on last week's Apex card, and his opponent fell out, Douglas Silva de Andrade. Weight cut issues. You could see his skull through the skin of his face. He was having a real tough time at 40 years old on the scale. I have not done my research or tape for this fight, Luke, so all this is coming kind of right off the top of the head. We know Chris Gutierrez, the leg kick guy. Sexy Mexi, very good boxing, utilizes space very well. I got to think the pay-per-view sized cage is going to be a benefit to him here in this spot, but he's mostly a boxer. I mean, underrated wrestling. Every once in a while, he can get that going, but Chris Gutierrez is a very tough guy to corral and kind of take down and get to the mat. Early lean here. I kind of lean towards Gutierrez just a little bit. He's been a little disappointing recently. Sexy Mexi definitely in better form, but as far as just kind of natural ceiling goes, I've always kind of felt that Gutierrez is maybe the better of the two fighters. So again, just very rough off the top, guys. Didn't have time to research or study on this one, so that's kind of my thoughts here. Luke, do you have anything on this one?
Yeah, I'm just looking at some of the odds. There's not many odds on this fight in particular. Where I see them, they've got Castañeda as a ever so slight favorite. Take that for what it's worth. I guess the line might move between now and then. I think your analysis is pretty much right on. I did a little bit of tipsy for this one. You got Sexy Mexi coming off that loss to Daniel Marcos, and that was a bit of a tough one, but it was a kind of a guy who was a little bit more physical and rugged and could dominate the range on his terms versus the opposite, so he didn't really have a great answer. So you're like, well, okay, how's he going to match it with Gutierrez? And Gutierrez obviously is the leg kick guy, a good takedown defense for the most part guy. Again, it's going to be a question of range. I tend to think that this will favor Gutierrez, who will limit the movement of Castañeda, right? Will chop at those legs and kind of slow him down a little bit. But I think that'll go to the wrestling. So this seems like the fight will be won or lost there. I guess I would take a slight lean in Gutierrez. I guess we'll see how it goes.
Okay. Yeah, you and I are kind of in the same boat on that one. Got a split decision written all over it. Salt Dirt in the chat, though, with a really good note here is that this will be 2 weight cuts back-to-back for Sexy Mexi, and that absolutely can take some of the steam off of a fighter, because these guys are trained to peak on a very specific night after a very long camp, and sometimes that quick turnaround with a second weight cut is too much for some people to handle. Would not be shocked if we
even if you can make it, right? Like, it's say even if you make it, like what it does to you. This is a true story. If I can very quickly, I won't say which fighter it is, but this is definitely a very, very famous UFC champion. I talked to their manager about this particular one fighter, and they told me that like they didn't at first, they would never do any of this, but like more recently, the last couple of years, they've been doing like a ton of blood work right around the weight cuts to see what it does internally. And they were they were like, it is beyond shocking how draining. Like, however bad you think it is, all the stories, everybody knows. And then when you see like the actual what happens in the blood work, it's even worse. The testosterone apparently just completely disappears from the reading. So doing that in back-to-back weeks, I'm not saying he can't make it in terms of like on the scale of the number. That's a dicey proposition to do something like that to your body.
Wow, that's crazy. I got to look into that for sure. The videos
I'll tell you who it is off the air. I'll tell you who it is off the air.
Cool. The videos people do of like the weight cuts and the behind the scenes stuff where people are like, dabbing their forehead with ice cubes and stuff. I can't imagine, man. That's already tough enough. If it's worse than it looks, then that's pretty dang bad. Shout out to my guy Pepe Silva in the chat saying the fight is actually at 145. Tapology's got it listed at 135. So if they're doing the 145 thing, that makes more sense. That makes a whole lot more sense for Sexy Mexi.
Still, even then, that's not, it's better. It's obviously a lot better, but that's still not great,
Yeah, he's still gonna have to cut something, so that's gonna be tough either way. And Luke, I know we're on a bit of a clock. For those of you guys watching, by the way, we do have a hard out today, so we'll move some of these fights a little.
Don't go too crazy, give or take.
For sure, but I just, this last fight with Sexy Mexi was supposed to be, in the apex, and I just have to comment on the ridiculous statement that came out today. Apparently, the UFC brass thinks that we can't tell the difference between a stadium and the apex.
I have the quote. You want me to read it?
Yeah, go for it, man.
Yeah. So this is from TKO president Mark Shapiro, who is a smart guy. He's not like a dumb guy, but he says, quote, this was on our earnings call today. When you watch on TV, talking about UFC, you can't tell if you're in a stadium, an arena, or the small apex we have in Vegas. Mark, buddy, we can tell. Okay? Okay.
Yeah. Now they're going to go back to the COVID days where they're playing like white noise, the crowd noise in the background because there's no one there to cheer. Like they're going to pull out all the stops to make that one work. No, we can tell, guys. We can tell. Full stadium is much preferred for these type of events. All right. We're good. Moving along. The next fight up, guys, Ozzy Diaz takes on Santos here. I'm not even going to try and bother with that first name. I didn't do my research on pronunciation here. This is the first fight on the card that I was actually ready to talk about here. A low-level fight, a Dana White's Contender Series-esque type of fight, and I have people online asking me to, Luke, one of my favorite phrases I've come up with here on the podcast is to trust my balls. When you've got that bet that seems a little crazy, you're on an island, nobody else likes it, but for some reason, the hairs on the back of your neck you got to rock up and do it sometimes, and they end up being some of the best bets out there just because you're listening to, your gut, your soul here. And someone's asking me to bet on Ozzy Diaz. It ain't happening, guys. No, Ozzy Diaz is 34 years old. I mean, he was the lights out and LFA middleweight champion, but he was a Dana White's Contender Series loser. And you guys know me. If you went on Dana White's Contender Series generally, and if you lost and or had 2 appearances, unless you're a special case where they brought you back for hype purposes, I don't think you're going to make it overall in the UFC as a prospect. And at 34 years old, he's already way too old to be considered, a prospect. This guy got brought into the UFC, got a shot against Min Yang Zhang, maybe the only road to UFC prospect that is worth any salt at this point. And now he's dropping back down to 185 pounds. So granted, that's his natural weight class. And he is a banger. 100% of his fights has ended inside the distance. 7 KO wins, 3 KO losses. Dude has absolutely no chill. He's got a nice power jab on him. He does switch stances decently well. He's got heavy hands, but really poor grappling defense, man. He got absolutely bodied by Joe Pyfer. And then you go back and you watch some of his other stuff and be like, maybe that's because it was Joe Pyfer, right? Well, no, Bevon Lewis in the LFA was like schooling this guy on the ground, taking his back with 0 issues. I'm not betting Ozzy Diaz ever. He will have a 4-inch reach advantage here over Santos, who is 10-1, 27 years old, and he's making his debut off Dana White's Contender Series. He was a massive underdog on Dana White's Contender Series. Shout out our guy, Yanni the Greek, who actually put that bet in on him live on the show at plus 340. So good on you, Yanni, for that one. Simple but effective striking is kind of the note that I've got for this guy. Real meat and potatoes. 1-2 right down the pipe, light on his feet, fades kind of in and out of range really well. Takedown defense checked out when he was on Contender Series. So if this is going to be a stand and bang, I've got a wild man who's not super durable versus a guy who keeps it nice and tight. Yeah, I'm going with Santos, Luke. What do you make of this fight?
Man, I don't have much to add except just one little thing. I got a couple of numbers here. Ozzy Diaz strikes absorbed per minute, 4.74, which, by the way, is more than double the strikes he lands. So he's got a super negative differential, but you counter that with the case of Santos, who's got 5.6 strikes landed per minute, but only absorbs 2.73. The point I'm trying to make is, in the case of Diaz, among other problems that you identified, he just gets hit a lot. He gets hit a lot. So that's on the ground. Obviously, some of these numbers are a function of being on the ground, but on the feet, he still gets hit more than I would care to see. And then I'd say on the feet, to your point, Santos, not a flashy guy, not a lot of spinning attacks, not super acrobatic, real core fundamentals, but seems to have like a natural understanding of range, pretty decent defense. I'd say decent. I just have a hard time understanding what Diaz has got on him, other than maybe like, to the point you raised, but you could surprise him or blitz on him or something like that. But short of that, I think this is Santos's fight to lose, man.
Yeah, I think Diaz is kind of round one or bust in this spot, and Santos is sitting at about a minus 205 favorite. I believe he was a little bit shorter just a couple of days ago at the opener. So a little bit of money looks to be coming in here on Santos as a 2-1 favorite, and that makes sense to me. This is a favorite or pass type of spot for me. I'd expect he probably finds a way to finish this guy. And one thing I didn't look at super hard was Santos's ability to grapple. Sub prop might be on the table here just because of how bad Ozzy Diaz is. Not necessarily because that's Santos's forte, but because it's the path of least resistance, and that one might get overlooked. So you guys keep an eye out for that prop a little later in the week. The next fight on the card is Mariano Santos, the legend, which is, that's a tough name, man. You better live up to that one. He's taking on Francis Marshall, of course, going with the fire nickname there. Luke, it's tough because I actually really like Francis Marshall. He's a guy that I think has got some upside to him, 25 years old. He's 2-2 off Dana White's Contender Series. Got right in his last fight, filling in on short notice, got that split decision win over Dennis Bazukia. But dang, man, it seems like he really is learning on the job. He's one of these young kids that's taking relatively tough fights early on in his run, and I just hope he's, I hope he's got the ability to kind of survive through some of this and come out the other end a better fighter, because he's been in a couple of wars and a couple of battles. Like, for coming in on short notice against Dennis Bazukia, he went a full 15 minutes. Cardio checked out. He held up. His durability held up, but he was bleeding all over the place. He was busted up heavy. He was too tired to wrestle, which is his best path to victory in that third round. He's one of these guys that's got like stinging power, but still looks uncomfortable on the feet. He's a wrestler. He's a grinder. He's a grappler. He's training over at ATT. And it seems like Grant Dawson's kind of taking him a bit under his wing just based off his Instagram. He's always hanging out with Grant Dawson, and that's a good place to be. If I was the coach that got to say, hey, kid, this is where you need to go. Seems like, ATT is a good spot based on of his skill set. Grant Dawson, Gamrot, Mavsar, good place to be. He's going to be 2 inches taller here, so he's going to have a bit of a height advantage over Mariano Santos, who's 14-1, 1 year younger, 24 years old. This is the Ultimate Fighter winner from Team Grosso here. So I guess 1-0 in the UFC, since that last fight for the Ultimate Fighter, I guess, kind of counts on your UFC run. Looks like he's training at Extreme Couture. I love this guy's timing. I love his picking shots selection. He reminds me of Daniel Marcos, who you mentioned a little bit earlier on the show. The way he kind of pot shots, power shots, nice timing, one at a time, but you can't call him low volume because he just does it so often. There's constantly something coming at you. Not much of a combination striker, but big knees. He moves backwards very well. Loves those chopping hard calf kicks. I'm pretty sure he took his opponent off of his feet in that first fight, which was pretty impressive. He got tested by Offley in the grappling in that the Ultimate Fighter finale that they had, and he did really well as the Matador. Has real strong hips, backed out of harm's way, has a nice clinch, looks very strong and physical. Man, this is a really tough fight for a guy like Francis Marshall, because I can see Mariano Santos stuffing takedowns early on in this fight, and then Marshall just being kind of stuck as target practice on the feet for about 10 more minutes. And real like toughness test here in that kind of a spot if he can't get the grappling going. So, man, as usual with these pay-per-view cards, I got to side with the favorite. They always seem so chalk heavy to me, but I'm finding a hard argument for Francis Marshall here. Minus 340, I got to go Santos.
I mean, I can concede that with Marshall that, it's been learning on the job. He's young, although Santos is younger than him. But, he changed camps because he was initially with Kurt Pellegrino's camp, Batman out of New Jersey. And he was also match made a little tough, like giving him Bulgarian, I thought was maybe, they were trying to see what they had, but I think that was a little bit too much for him too soon. To your point, he has since rallied a little bit, coming in a late notice and beating up Bazukia. But I don't know, dude. I don't know about this one. I think Santos, to your point, not a volume striker, but definitely pretty good at picking his shots. Obviously, winning the Ultimate Fighter, doing exactly that to an over aggressive in your face opponent. It's like, I'm not saying that we're going to get a repeat of that on Saturday, but that is the very condition by which Marshall actually does his best work. And so, this is not a guy who is unaccustomed to this, to the point you raised previously on Ultimate Fighter. He had shown some pretty good takedown defense, or at least, a functional takedown defense. I mean, this is really the fault line of this fight, right? Like, to the extent that Marshall has to spend any time on the feet at length, this is going to probably go real bad for him. But to the extent he can mix it up and then obviously get the grappling going, it's a completely different ball game. So the question is really on that fault line, who do you have? And I don't know, man. Santos seems fleet of foot. You know what your opponent's bringing in this particular case, or at least you have a pretty good idea. Again, previous ability, kind of things you already articulated. I think Santos is going to wipe him out here. To be perfect, I don't bet. Not that I have anything against it because I'm just bad at it. But if I had a little extra scratch, I might even put one here on a stoppage. So
there you go. I don't mind the look there, Luke. I really don't. The one time that Francis Marshall in his short career has been finished, it's been by knockout, and Santos seems like a guy that could maybe do that. Granted, Isaac Dulgarian is kind of Francis Marshall plus, like a kind of worst case scenario.
Yes, it was him, only better at that time.
Exactly.
This is not Santos. I just mean that, like, he had to. To your point, aside from just learning on the job, they've match made him in a way that was not exactly easy. So
yeah, no, they the only thing I can come up with is they must have thought that he was what Dulgarian is. Like, they must have really thought that Francis was that guy. Like, to put him kind of through the ringer that he's gone through right now, they must have really had full on belief that he was going to be able to pass some of these tests, which unfortunate.
I mean, who knows what his managers or what are telling UFC matchmakers, like, this is the way guys get signed. They just listen to the managers. Oh, I got this guy. He's going to be blah, 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 blah. And of course they hear that all the time, but who knows? They may have been like going crazy about it. And they're like, all right, let's put this guy front of the line. And then you get there and you're like, okay, he's obviously skilled, good athlete, but there's some work to be done. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, you and I are lining up on the same side there, man. I would not be surprised at all if you're right about this thing ending in a finish. And Luke, I got to tell you, don't worry about being awful at betting. I'm terrible at betting, and I've got a podcast for it, so it's not an issue. Go for it, man.
Right, duly noted.
All right, guys. Alex Morono takes on Carlos Leal in the next fight, and I need a minute, man. Luke, when they booked this fight, I was like, thank God I can get my money back. Okay. Because I had a pile on Carlos Leal in his last fight against Renat.
Yes. He got whored. Yes, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
And he was robbed blind. Mm-hmm. They snuck into my house. They put a bag over my head and they beat me with pillows filled with bricks. They took my money, and I was just sitting there with my pockets turned out, nothing left in my wallet. And I've tried to kind of remove it from my memory for a bit. Carlos Leal has always been one of my favorite PFL guys. And I was so hyped when he came to the UFC. And I really was like, he's going to be underappreciated. We're going to have an opportunity to make money on this guy. They stole it from me. And I went, okay, this is a thank you fight. This is a, hey, our bad. You probably should have got the nod that time type of fight. And I'm just licking my chops on this against Alex Morono. They drop him at minus 800. So you got to lay 8-1 on Carlos Leal in order. Oh, and that's insane as far as the number goes.
Yeah, you're right.
It screams, don't touch me. It screams, everyone knows already, and we don't want your action. Your money's no good here. So disappointing, because now I can't even go get my money back from losing it the first time. I love Alex Morono. He's one of these greasy underdog story type of guys that he seems to be fighting above his potential. The not overly athletic guy that through sheer skill and hard work and force of will is able to swim in the UFC deep end. And I love guys like that. And I've made money backing Alex Morono, but at 34 years old, he's on a bit of a tough run here, 1-3 in his last 4 fights. It just seems like we've kind of reached the end point here for his fairy tale run. He's a bit of a UFC yes man, which is great. He'll take fights, no question. Tough guy, get in there with anybody. I think this lines up pretty easily for a Carlos Leal potentially knockout here over a much older Alex Morono, who's been in some decent back and forth type of battles recently, but minus 700 is a stupid number that I just can't get to.
I just have a feeling that Morono, to your point you raised, very crafty veteran, guy who has maximized technical development, because obviously I think, what kind of an athlete he is gonna, there's a ceiling to it that we can be nice about it. I think Leal is just going to march him down. And the question is, like, does Morono have anything to discipline him in the way? I mean, the answer is, of course, maybe, but it's just not something I can really count on. Firepower for firepower, physicality for physicality, backing up constantly under this guy's pressure. I just don't know what the affirmative case would be. Like, of course, things like this happen, mathematically, but what's the grand vision for what he's going to lord over Carlos Leal? Like, that's the part I just can't even see. Survive, maybe.
Volume?
Defend, maybe.
Just raw volume.
Raw volume, yeah. But like, even then, dude, like, Leal will bite down on the mouthpiece. You've seen it. You know what I mean? Like,
exactly.
It's a tough matchup. We're picking chalk here, but like, they're making it hard to pick the underdog thus far. You know what I'm saying? So give me Leal by, I guess stoppage round 2, something like that.
Okay. I don't mind it. Some people in the chat are saying Leal by decision, which I think would be interesting if Morono was able to hold up for an entire 15-minute fight against this guy. Mystery Man saying depends on how much acne Leal has this time around, which I think
he was covered in it last time. I was like, my man, either you got 2 problems. One, either you need a different body wash, or number 2, you might be enjoying some pharmaceuticals. Who's to say? I'm not making allegations,
Yeah, clean those damn mats, man. Wherever he is grappling, there's something on those. Yeah. The last time that Alex Morono was knocked out was Santiago Ponzinibbio, and that did come in the 3rd round after like a beating. So I mean, I guess there's maybe some upside to an over here and maybe a late finish, like a round 2, round 3, as opposed to an early starching. But we'll have to kind of wait and see. I do think at the end of the day, it's Leal by knockout. I think he finds the button at some point and is just too much. Plus, like you mentioned, Luke, you were tiptoeing around it. I'll say it. One of these two guys is the drug abuser. And when it comes to gambling and betting, if I can make money on the guy cheating, I'll take it. So I think Leal is going to pack a punch that Morono doesn't. And I think he probably finds a spot to close out the show at some point here. All right. Bravia saying to don't anchor Leal. I got to tell you, Bravia, I'm not touching these 7-1 type favorites. It wouldn't even do anything. That's the thing. So, like, if you parlay Santos with Carlos Leal, that minus 700 moves you down to minus 215. So you're still like in Chalk City trying to bring that line down. You can't even do that. It wouldn't mean anything. So no, I'm not parlaying up Carlos Leal. If anything, it's a prop or you move on. Speaking of moving on, Brunno Ferreira takes on Armen Petrosyan. And I've got a soft spot for Armen Petrosyan. I've just been real disappointed recently with the results. I kind of felt like Armen Petrosyan was another one of these guys that was going to sneak in here, Luke, and just be real nasty and underrated. He's huge. He's so tall. He's so long, big for the weight class. Really good kickboxer. I love the way he switches up. His kicks are really solid at range. And then if you finally get past those legs and get in close, he sits down hard on those punches in boxing range. I love the way he kind of floats between those two. And I think it makes it hard for a lot of strikers to handle. I was really impressed with him in that decision with Gregory Rodriguez and Caio Bravo back to back. Those were very competitive fights at the top end of the division. And then he kind of ran into some trouble. Rodolfo Vieira, a guy I thought he was going to be able to get out from under and then kind of make life hard on deeper in the fight. It took one takedown. He never had any chance to put that game plan to use. And then, of course, he gets memed by Sharabul at Magomed. That was highly disappointing to me because I thought that was going to be a real back and forth competitive style fight. And then he gets hit with the double spinning back fist, which we've never seen before. I can't really blame him for going down to that one. Brunno Ferreira is a meme machine, man. 32 years old. He's 5'10". He's so short. He has ridiculous God-given power, and he's got judo hips that can send you flying. So it's a really fun combination. But he's another life and death type of fighter. 2-2 in his last 4 fights. Everything by finish. Abus got him out of there in round 3, and all the other fights were round 1 finishes, whether for or against. And he's just got this ability to nuke people. The Gregory Rodriguez knockout is one that I always go back to and kind of remember fondly. And then when you can get him at range, Nursultan Razaboev was able to catch a kick and then put him to sleep with one big shot. So it's tough because I kind of think Armen Petrosyan has to make this fight boring if he's going to win it. I think he's got to stay away, don't engage in the grappling, keep this kid away from you, don't let him touch you. But I do think he's the far more technical and cleaner striker of the two. So one of the more competitive lines here when we're talking sports betting wise, I do lean ever so slightly towards Armen Petrosyan being able to snap this skid and get back on track. But I worry about the durability coming off a knockout loss against a guy like Brunno, who's burned me before. -155 Armen is the lean. Haven't bet anything. My money's in my pocket so far on this one, but that's where I'm looking here, Luke. What do you make of this one?
Man, this is a tough one for me. I don't really know what to say. Petrosyan, to me, forgivable about what happened against Charles Bullet, as you mentioned. Bop was just like, okay, fine. You got hit with something that we actually hadn't even seen in UFC history, so very, very forgivable. But the problem was prior to that, even though he was doing well at times, one of my biggest issues is not that he doesn't land with authority or he manages the setups reasonably. He's got a fundamental game when he wants it and an aggressive one, but it had he doesn't adapt to problems. He's got like a game plan and he just rams it, and either it works or it doesn't. And it's a little bit like the lack of imagination and adjustment is a problem. Now you might say, well, he's going up against a guy who you don't need a ton of it's not an easy guy to beat, but he's not like a very clever striker per se. So why is that relevant? Well, if whatever he's trying doesn't work, he's going to have no other gear, which is really the weird part. The problem for me about Ferreira, I don't know if this is fair or not. You can tell me I'm wrong. A little chinny, maybe. A little chinny. A little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
And do you trust Petrosyan to be able to find it?
He's more of a volume decision guy.
That's what I'm saying. So it's like,
not really.
So I struggle with this one. So I guess I will take a flyer. I'll take a flyer on Ferreira, but very uncomfortably. Like, I don't know about. Both these guys are coming off of losses, right? So I just don't know about either of them, to be honest.
I hear you. And this is one where, Luke, honestly, like sometimes something I'm struggling with and have been for a while as far as my gambling goes, you got to know when to like back off of yourself, right? I've never really gotten Brunno right. I've been kind of zigging when I should be zagging every time he steps in the cage. And even Armen Petrosyan being a guy that I felt like I had a pretty good read on, his last couple of fights have shown me that maybe I was a little higher on him than I should have been. So I've kind of been wrong on both these guys. I'm saying Armen Petrosyan. I'm not betting this one, guys. We always talk about it. Bookmakers have to set a line. You don't have to bet on every single fight. This is a clear pass for me, and pay attention because I'm not good at betting either one of these guys.
Oh, yeah. I wouldn't touch this one with a 10-foot pole. Fuck that. No. And also this one has like a weird capacity for injury too. I don't know why. I just have a weird feeling that these two are going to match up and something disastrous is going to happen potentially. So yeah, I wouldn't touch it at all.
Brunno causes car crashes. That's his favorite thing to do. So absolutely. You know what, Mystery Man in the chat, bet violence. That's the way to go.
Yes.
I like it.
Yes.
I like it. All right, guys. Next fight. Wrong tab.
I love this fight, bro. I love this fight.
It's so good. It is so good. Rei Tsuruya takes on Joshua Van. And we're talking about freaking Francis Marshall learning on the job. Josh Van, I've never seen somebody as active as this kid. He is setting records right now for how quick he turns around at 23 years old and just gets right back in there. And coming off that huge win over Cody Djorden, like that's not a slouch type of win. That's an I'm here type of win. You know, his grappling is the last piece of his game. That's the part where like he didn't learn how to grapple until he started fighting. And now he's able to defend takedowns from a wrestler like Cody and then wear him out and beat on him for the rest of the fight to where it was, we almost needed a mercy stoppage. I mean, frankly, I did need a mercy stoppage. I had Josh Van round 3 KO. And Luke, I can't tell you how many times I've donated on Josh Van to win by round 3 KO. He never does it. I'm so annoyed because he should. Multiple fights. He's got these guys on death's door in round 3, and somehow they just do not fall over. I love the way he rips the body. I love his activity. He kind of inherited the Derek Lewis, like, fuck you grappling technique where he just kind of gets up. He's getting so good at defending positions and being able to stand up and get back to his feet. Love Josh Van. He's a great addition. And I just hope, I just want to see more of him. I hope he doesn't burn out, too quickly because they're using him so often at such a young age. Rei Tsuruya, undefeated, 10-0, 22 years old. This is a real Young Bucks type of fight here. Carlos Hernandez was his UFC debut, and that was tough because he was a massive favorite in that spot. And I wanted so badly to bet just a little bit of money on Carlos Hernandez because I'm not sold on these road to UFC fighters. And he started to slow down a little bit at the end of that fight. But I've got to kind of preface this with the pace of that fight. Like, Merab is the only human being who wouldn't slow down at the pace that those two guys were fighting. The scrambles, ridiculous. The reversals, insane. I'm a little worried about Rei Tsuruya's like physical prowess. He doesn't have his man muscles yet, it seems like. There were a couple times where Carlos Hernandez was able to just kind of overpower him, which is not common for Carlos Hernandez. He's usually on the lighter end of the power scale, it feels like, but he was able to kind of reverse and take Rei down a couple times, which ended up in a scramble and Rei looking for leg locks and knee bars, and it's insane. I love it. I love everything about it. I feel like Rei has to look for jiu-jitsu here, Luke. I feel like he's got to take a page out of like Aljo's book and look for like body triangles and try and hold down Josh Van, because I don't think this kid has anything for Van on the feet. But we know Van is going to concede those takedowns early, so it makes it real tough because it's an early versus late type of scenario. Josh Van is currently a minus 195-ish favorite, and that's a real tough price to lay, knowing he's probably going to lose at least the first round of this fight, if not more. So I guess Josh Van by greasy split decision is the way I'm looking. I expect this fight to be very close and very competitive. I'm giving Rei, props for his ability to continue wrestling and scrambling and make it tougher on Van to pull off the complete comeback. But it is 2025, and it is the year of deflowered prospects, Luke. If you're undefeated in 2025, it's not a good place to be competing. Some of these guys losing that in a hurry. And I feel like Rei probably gets that lesson here this weekend at UFC 313. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, there are many differences, but this one feels a little bit like Tetsuro Taira versus Brandon Royval. Like a little bit. It's got a little bit of that going on. I love Rei Tsuruya. I think he's so talented. I think his grappling style is so fun. He takes so many risks. But the reason why he takes so many risks and finds unusual positions and really rides out like these kinds of grappling scenarios that you typically don't see other fighters do is because he doesn't have much of the rest of his game to buoy him. So he has to take risk, and that makes it fun and that makes it interesting. And he is quite gifted, as you indicated. I just love it, all the different transitions he sets and the ways in which he can stuff takedowns, start takedowns, initiate grappling sequences, get on top, find the back. He can't really hold position that well, and he doesn't have dynamite ground and pound. So I think that body triangle scenario you're talking about from the back, or some kind of control position that he can maintain, is really going to be crucial here. I don't know how that's going to go against Josh Van. Your point is well taken that early that might be an issue, but overall, Van 80% takedown defense, that's pretty good. But really, I just have to point this out. If you have in the 3s as your strikes landed per minute, that's about average for a UFC fighter. In the 4s, that's high. 5s is really high. Josh Van is sitting at 8.88.
It's ridiculous.
I mean, he is raining on these hoes, raining on them. They get a fucking umbrella. Here comes Josh Van, right? You know what I mean? Like, it is unbelievable the pace that he puts up. Now, that's the problem with that. The central tension there is that means he's probably going to run into Tsuruya several times, which is going to give Tsuruya the ability to drag the fight down to the mat, get behind him, get past the elbows, the whole 9 yards. So this is really going to be a test of the scrambling ability and the ability to It's one thing to defend a takedown. The second component is to extract yourself off the fence, to break grips, and then get away. And that's a much different skill set than just stuffing a takedown initially. I have no doubt, Clint, that he can stuff the takedown. What I'm going to question is to what extent he can extract himself. I think he will do it, but this is one scenario where you got a one-trick pony. Okay, no question about it. 22, I hope he develops as a game. But right now, he's a one-trick pony. But that trick extends, and it's difficult, and it's sticky, and it's lingering. Josh has been a little bit reckless at times. This is a good chance for him to get right. The last thing I'd add, his last opponent is not like Tsuruya, but it was Djorden, who was also a bit of a wrestler. So at a bare minimum, he's not going from, Shara Bullet to Chimaev or something, right? It's kind of in the same family-ish of fighter. I think that will lift him a little bit here.
Yeah, back-to-back camps for wrestling heavy opponents. And, Luke, from my untrained eye, now I dropped out of wrestling freshman year of high school because, frankly, it was too hard for me. And I'll admit that. I'll admit that on camera. I got bored because of the repetitive nature of wrestling. I would much rather do track and field than wrestling because at least you got to kind of do different things. And I just couldn't hang with those monsters in the wrestling room that wanted to just repeat. I was like, I'm done. Get me out of here. I feel like Cody Djorden is a better wrestler than Rei.
Yes,
I believe
Ray's got a little bit of that like Ruotolo brother in him where he's like or even like a Charles Oliveira where he can weave a hook in and all of a sudden it stops a position and he's got a little bit of that in him,
And that's kind of what I was going to say is that wrestling, it's Cody, but this is a grappler. Like, I feel like it's a different ball game. So even if you're ready for the wrestling aspect of it, the way he it weaves is a perfect way to put it. The way he weaves, the way he rolls. Like if Josh Van makes a mistake where I've seen him turn his back a couple times to get up. Now he's going to deal with somebody being on his back rather than someone trying to grab an ankle or wrap their arm around his waist. Ray's not going to do that. Ray's going to jump on this kid's back, try to sink the hooks in and drag him back to the floor. Totally different ball game. I'm very excited to see how he's going to handle it. And frankly, if Rei is able to survive the late rounds of Josh Van, I think he could pull off this upset. And when DraftKings drops the splits, guys, when they put out the spreads, the +3.5 on Rei Tsuruya, I think might be an okay look. Because if you think he can survive that third round of hell from Josh Van, I can see him banking at least the first round of this fight, and then you'll be able to win that even if he loses a 29-28. So interesting potential dog or pass type of situation here on Rei Tsuruya. Let's keep it rolling. Next up, you've got Curtis Blaydes taking on Rizvan Kuniev. And I feel so bad.
The real Rizzler.
I like it. Curtis Blaydes is I'm so sad, Luke. Because for years
he should win this one. He should win this one.
Well, the thing for me though is that he's such a bridesmaid that it's like I was like, if Francis Ngannou isn't in the UFC, Curtis Blaydes has gold wrapped around his waist. And then we find out Tom Aspinall's the dude. You know what I mean? That it's like he's just always like one short that I don't feel like he's ever going to get to that point, and he's got all the skills to be able to, and he could. But there's just too many good guys coming up at the wrong time that have kind of got his number. And he's 34 years old at this point. He's been knocked out 5 times. I mean, pure grapplers at the heavyweight class, there's just not that many of them. And Curtis Blaydes, one of the best, if not the best wrestler of the bunch. His striking has come a really long way. Obviously, he's far more natural as a grappler still to this day. But really, you can kind of pinpoint exactly who's going to beat him. Because even though he's been knocked out 5 times, it is Tom Aspinall, Sergey Pavlovich, Derek Lewis, Francis Ngannou. So, like, you've got to be the power puncher of power punchers to be able to end Curtis Blaydes' night, right? If you're not on that level, he seems to have no problem handling you. Volkov, not a raw, ruthless power guy. Jairzinho, while he is a death punch guy, solo volume, you can back that guy off pretty easily, mix it up, etc. Junior Dos Santos, a little old when he got to him, right? Maybe Prime Junior, different story, but Curtis Blaydes has a type. Now, Kuniev, 13-2-1, 31 years old. I was surprised at how young he is, actually. He's coming over to the UFC after going on just one hell of a run. 2 times Dana White Contender Series competitor, which you guys know I've got my suspicions about that. Eagle FC, and then he competed in the PFL. And here's kind of the kicker, Luke.
I watched that fight, and I know what happened.
Yeah. Well, I'm talking about what happened after the fight.
Yeah.
So it got posted as a no contest after he dragged Ferreira all over the cage for 15 straight minutes. But this man popped for anabolic steroids, drostanolonov, minotone, boldenone, 19 nanodrone
dude, he was
steroids.
taking that Captain America shit. You know what I mean?
He took everything.
He's
Like
taking
there's
that
a
Captain America
page.
shit.
There's a page of shit that this guy was on, and the UFC is like, no problem. Come on over, kid.
Yeah. They understand something. Can we take a moment here? Understand something that they would rather bring this guy over, who, you know, I'm sure he's a nice guy, although he's got let's call it a checkered past, rather than just bringing back Francis to bring some life into this division. This is who they're bringing in. Like, it does, like, they're not even, like, are they actively trying to make it the very best heavyweight division that it can be? Obviously, they're not, right? Like, obviously, they're not. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, at this point, they're just looking for bodies. And,
well, they got one.
They got one. We got to fight. So, Luke, really, the only thing here for me is one major question of, is Curtis Blaydes shot? Like, that's all this comes down to for me. Because Kuniev's a plus 250 favorite. Curtis Blaydes minus 310. Curtis Blaydes, I think, still probably has some kind of wrestling advantage here in this spot, cardio, striking, etc. But I think Kuniev, obviously, the UFC is not worried about what these guys are putting in their bodies at this point. Nobody's getting busted. USADA's gone. It's over. I think he's going to be pumped full of everything he possibly can, similar to Hamdi. And if he comes over and throws one of those overhands, I worry about Curtis Blaydes' chin at this stage. I really worry about Curtis Blaydes' chin. If this turns into an extended grappling match, nobody really wins those with Curtis Blaydes, but it is interesting that he's got like a 30% takedown defense. I know Jalin Almeida is mostly responsible for ruining that, but it does also kind of come across as like Blaydes needs to be the hammer when it comes to the grappling. And if he's not, he can be taken down. I just worry a little bit about this fight, because if Curtis gets hit with an overhand and Kuniev puts him on his back, what does that look like? I think I'll pick Curtis to win, but I can't bet him at this number, man.
I like Curtis big in this one. I think Kuniev is just, you know, replacement level guy.
Okay.
Could be wrong. I mean, you know, obviously, to your point, he's young. Okay, fair enough. And in heavyweight, he's like really young. So maybe even if he's not great now, he might turn out to be something better with a little bit more maturation. Fair enough. You know, you bring up the fact that Blaydes has been slept 5 times, but it's like Aspinall once, Ngannou twice. I think Pavlovich iced him, and then who's the last one that I'm not thinking of? Oh no, I said Francis twice, right? What was the other one? Oh, Derek Lewis. So I mean, I'm not here to say that like they don't count. They obviously count, but it's like, you know, 3 of them are Derek Lewis and Francis, and the other one's Tom Aspinall. Like, and the other one's, I mean, these are all like devastating punchers, which Kuniev is not that we've seen. And I just feel like you've got a guy in Blaydes who has fought significantly better competition and performed better against significantly better competition. If he's washed, then this is a problem, but I don't think he is. And I think he makes it look easy is a strong word. I won't say that. I think he wins comfortably. So,
okay.
Yeah.
All right. I hear you, man. And I've been a big Curtis Blaydes supporter. So, you know, 2 years ago, I'm right there with you. There's something, I don't know, his last couple fights, there's something about it. You know, the chat's mentioning the IQ problems of him just refusing to even bother shooting on Pavlovich, which he got stuffed on like a big one. I think he realized Pavlovich was tougher to take down than he expected. So,
dude, so I went back and I looked at that fight in detail. Okay, not for this particular moment, but like in the past. And the reality is, if you watch that fight, Curtis is landing on him repeatedly. The mistake that Curtis made was not in thinking that he was the better striker. He was the better striker. Now, he's not the more powerful striker, and it was boxing, and it's dangerous. So he ended up losing, obviously, in a very bad way. He was landing a bunch on Sergey. Sergey is just a fucking meat mountain, and, you know, just sat there and took it. I just don't understand why anyone would think Kuniev is that guy. He doesn't, from what I have seen, he is not that guy. So you're not that guy, pal. You're not that guy. So.
I hear you. And Meat Mountain is a great way to
we have to stop.
Whose
Dogs do I hear? Who's dog?
That is my dog, Bo. We do the Link Memorial Dog of the Week because Link passed away around Christmas last year. We got a puppy. He's a golden doodle looking. I should have named. I put a tweet out a while ago, Luke. I should have named him Chase Hooper because he's a curly-headed fuck. He's got like this little. He's got this little fuzz on the top of his head, and he would have been a perfect Chase Hooper. Awesome. But for those paying attention, my gamblers here who are highly superstitious, as you probably know, the dog barking in the background as we talk about a big chalky favorite winning the fight is a bad sign.
That's funny. That's funny. Good point.
All right, guys. And yes, Joshua Snyder, I think if you juice up, I have faith. You're live in the UFC if you get all juiced up, buddy. I got you. All right, everybody. Mauricio Huffy, one shot, takes on Bobby King Green. And this is just a changing of the guard type of fight, Luke. I honestly can keep this one probably a little bit short. Bobby Green is one of the most exceptional fighters we've seen in a long time, but he is a bit long in the tooth at this point with almost 50 professional fights, 38 years old, and the durability is waning, right? He's been knocked out and hurt a lot recently. Ruffy is the 11-1. He's their version of Conor McGregor. They're really he likes to try to emulate Conor a little bit with the karate style, the way he bounces on his feet, he leaps in and explodes. He's Conor Nerd Gregor is what he is. I forced that. That's too hard. That doesn't work. Forget that. But they call him one shot for a reason, right? Just massive power. He nukes people. He usually stays out of range. He got tired beating up James Yontop, and that's kind of the only reason that fight got hairy the way it did, is because James Yontop is made out of absolute steel, and he wasn't able to put him away. Should have, probably, multiple times. I don't think Bobby can take that early beating, but it's a classic Bobby Green fight, because if Huffy slows down even a little bit, Bobby will pace the guy in round 2 and 3, right? Like, you're just not going to get off the hook. I just don't think he can take those big power shots. I think Ruffy's probably going to get another round 1 finish here.
I don't know if it'll be round 1 or not, but we should take a moment here. I can't believe I'm saying this, but dude, Paddy Pimblett fucked him up. You know what I mean? Obviously, he was on the ground or whatever, but submitting him basically twice and kind of mangling his arm, and he was getting controlled. It was, that was a quick demolition. Now, granted, I don't know if it's Huffy or Hoofy. I just say Hoofy, but he's not that, that's not the kind of fighter he is. But we know what this is. Bobby Green is going to have his hands down, and he's going to be doing this number, trying to play Matador and make all, do the not John Wick, I'm sorry, the Neo thing in the Matrix where he's dodging bullets and they're all going by. And I think he probably will get by on that act for a little while, but then Hoofy's going to find the target, and it's going to be devastating, I suspect, in that way. Now, the part that's kind of interesting to me is, man, I can't believe it. I remember watching, I think I was at least one of Bobby Green's Strikeforce fights. That's what an old piece of shit I am. The fact that he's still here doing it, the guy's 38, he's almost 39 in this weight class. That is ancient. And we're dealing with one of these guys who's he hasn't made this declaration, but as well as I do, he'll probably say something along the lines of you don't have to worry about a takedown from me. I'm going to come in there hands down and blah, blah, blah. It's he's going to disadvantage himself in every possible way against a remarkably dangerous striker with insane creativity and violence capacity. It's how do you think that one's going to go? Probably real bad for the old guy with his hands down. You know what I mean? This one doesn't require significant noodling to, I think, identify the deserved favorite here.
Completely agree with you. And just, because I'm an insane person, Luke, I'm glad you mentioned Paddy the Baddy, because your boy sprinkled on Paddy to be champion of this weight class by the end of the year. 90-1 odds. 90-1.
Wow.
So just little bitty sprinkle.
That's an insane bet. You're definitely going to lose your money, but I appreciate the balls on that one.
Well, my theory here is if he waxes Michael Chandler next, which I expect him to,
okay,
they'll rush him to a title shot.
They
I can bet
that.
His opponent. You know what I mean? So if he's going to lose to Islam, that's fine. I can middle a 90-1. You know what I mean? So
I've said this since the early days of the rivalry. They put him up against Ilia Topuria. Ilia's going to send that chin into the fucking 5th row.
Probably.
He's if you guys have never seen this fight, I'll give you one to look up on Fight Pass right after this over. It doesn't even go around. Look up Shane Carwin versus Christian Wellish. It's on UFC Fight Pass. Shane Carwin hits him with, I believe, a right hand that sends his mouthpiece into motherfucking orbit. It ran into Elon Musk's Starlink or like satellite out there. I mean, he launched it. That is what Topuria is going to do to him. But to your point, I think he might be Chandler too, so it could be a fun night.
I miss Shane Carwin. And by the way, while I was looking stuff up, that's Bo. That's my boy Bo right there.
Oh, look at that guy. Yeah. Hell yeah, bro. That's a great looking dog.
Yeah, he's a good dog. He's a good boy. He's a little young, so he's a little chaotic, but he's definitely good. All right, guys, we're getting to the good stuff here. Do me a favor, hit the like button. Luke, I know we're going a little long. You still good?
Yeah, I'm good, bro.
Good deal. All right.
Through.
All right. Next up, Amanda Lemos takes on Iasmin Lucindo. This is a hyped up fight, man. All these young guns here in the UFC. Lucindo is, I believe, 23 years old. 23. So just another absolute phenom at this age who's making a run at the deep end. Like, whether it's the end of this year or early next year, Luke, I think we're going to see some of these belts changing hands, and they're going to be getting younger in a hurry if a couple of these prospects happen to pan out. She's got a ridiculous amount of experience for somebody her age. She recently got by Marina Rodriguez in her last fight via split decision, and now she takes what is, in my opinion, a decent step up in competition, taking on Amanda Lemos, who is probably the most violent and dangerous fighter in this weight class outside the champion. Just the raw nuclear power of Amanda Lemos, combined with the fact that she can dive on anybody's neck and she's got that squeeze. She just needs one, man. She just needs one shot at that guillotine. And even though her grappling is pretty poor, her takedown defense, not great, she sells out for that guillotine. And if you're not one of the best, she's going to choke you unconscious. I will note, Iasmin Lucindo has been submitted 3 times already as a professional. Now, again, she's extremely young, so those submissions came early on in her career, but that seems to be a bit of an Achilles heel for her, at least was at one point in her game. I like the way she strikes. I like how measured she is. She's got good counters. She's got fast hands, stinging power, not like crazy knockout power, but respectable power. And then very good grappling. You know, she survived her last couple of fights really based on her grappling chops, but man, Luke, she does everything from the body lock. I don't know if you've, well, I'm sure you have, but for the people in the chat, I don't know if anybody's noticed. Everything is body lock, trip, body lock, trip. She doesn't have a ton of depth to her grappling game. And in multiple fights, the Polyana Viana fight, the Marina Rodriguez fight, she literally just lays on top of her opponent. She's not advancing. She's not doing damage. She's not working to create anything. She's just kind of holding position. She's been stood up several times in her UFC fights. Now, Amanda Lemos was taken down and just completely rinsed by Zhang Weili in her title shot. She was taken down by Verna Jandiroba, and she was submitted in that spot. But Verna is the best submission grappler in this weight class, right? Except maybe Mackenzie Dern can say a little something about that. Finesse style points, you know. But I love Verna Jandiroba. Anyway, I actually think this might be too much too soon, Luke. I actually feel like if these two are trading on the feet, Lemos is going to win bigger moments than Marina Rodriguez did. But I love Marina, but Amanda Lemos is far more dangerous. So when they car crash, Lemos is going to be the one winning those moments. And if Iasmin Lucindo takes down Amanda Lemos, if she doesn't come up with something other than that body lock, I don't know if she's going to have the success some of these other women have had. It's a very close, very competitive fight. But minus 150 on Iasmin Lucindo to take yet another massive leap in competition and pass the test. That's too much for me, man. I'm eyeballing Amanda Lemos at plus 125 here as a live dog.
Well, this was going to be the first dog I took, and then all of a sudden you stole my thunder here a little bit. So we are of the similar. I think that Lucindo can win this. I don't think this is some kind of walk in the park. And the things that you've identified, all true, by the way. The getting stood up is really the most important one. Like, there's nothing worth, like, we kind of associate, grappling-based styles, and she's got 2.4 takedowns per 15 minutes, right? So she's almost won a round, not quite. But she doesn't do a ton with them necessarily, and at least she's had problems in certain bouts where that really came up as an issue. But the point you raised, I think 23, that's the big one. I mean, she's barely gotten started in her MMA career. Whatever else, how many fights she has, I'm not... You know, her development doesn't match the number of fights. And so this is a big fight, one I think she can win, but Lemos is tough. She's certainly well experienced. I think that, you know, is there a world where she could get controlled? Yes, but she's pretty good at reversals. At the couple times I've seen them, I think the body lock thing you bring up, that does give me a little bit of pause because Lemos is not like the most like fast pummeler and underhooker. She kind of takes her time a little bit, but I just think she's got enough overall skills to make someone with very incomplete offense like Lucindo struggle a bit. So I'll take the dog here. I'm with you. I'm going to go Lemos. I don't know how to bet that one the right way, but that's just what my gut tells me. How about that?
I hear you, Luke. And with that, that'll be the Link Memorial Dog of the Week.
There it is. Yeah.
We're lining up on it. So that'll be the Link Dog of the Week, Amanda Lemos. The only problem, Luke, that I have with this is that we have been absolutely printing money with the most underrated betting angle of all time. My guy Josh Snyder in the chat pointing it out here. Brazilian lesbians with neck tattoos, specifically with neck tattoos. They are just absolutely crushing the UFC. And Iasmin Lucindo is somebody who we've gone to the well with that angle before.
Here, yeah.
So I am a little bit scared to go against our girl on this one because we really have been on the Lucindo train since she made it to the UFC. Feels like a bit of a betrayal, but I think this one might be the one where she has to pump the brakes just a little bit because she is 23. She can take a loss and come back and then go on a wrecking ball run after that to the title. I don't think she's quite there yet.
By the way, I'm looking up some of their metrics here. Yeah, no, I mean, again, Lucindo has a bunch of experience. I understand that, but she's still raw. She's raw, and Lemos is limited, but not raw. So to me, gives me a little bit more of a push for Lemos.
Absolutely. All right, moving along, guys. Absolute banger, Luke. This could be a fight of the night contender potentially. Jalin Turner here, Ignacio, Bahamondes. Another one where they're making me cry a little bit because they're both my guys. I love both these guys. Jalin Turner, another guy that I've had a whole lot of success betting on throughout his career. He's just a monster. He's a bit of a size bully, granted. He's just so huge for this weight class. People can't handle him. He is 29 years old, and he's on a bit of a skid here. 1-3 in his last 4, but in context, 2 of those were via split decision to some of the best in the weight class, Dan Hooker and Mateus Gamrot. The Renato Moicano knockout is a little concerning. I thought he had the walk-off, Luke. I thought it was over when he popped Renato Moicano and tried to do a walk-off KO, and then turns out he wasn't quite done yet. Kind of loses momentum and melts in the second round of that fight. That's a bad look coming back from that, but he doesn't like to get paid by the hour. Jalin Turner usually gets his business done inside the distance in the first or the second round, but he can be had. He has been knocked out 4 times, and if you extend him, he has yet to win a decision in his professional career. Ignacio Bahamondes, 16-5. 27 years old, so just a little bit younger. He recently came off of a massive first-round KO win over Manuel Torres over at Noche UFC. He is the exact opposite, 3-1 in his last 4. Also decision problems. He got decisioned by Ludovic Klein in his first step up in the rankings. Coming back with back-to-back finishes since then. I've always said that the best base for MMA is training with Bilal Muhammad. Ignacio Bahamondes working with the big guy himself, good game plans, and learning how to grapple combined with that insane striking ability. You love to see it. He's actually in the intro video doing his highlight reel KO over Roosevelt Roberts, and he does love that spinning heel kick, which can land with serious intent. This is a weird moments versus moments fight, Luke. We don't usually get those. It's usually like minutes versus moments. This is moments versus moments. Like both these guys just have big, insane, powerful moments where they can kill a guy, and it's up to you to survive that. Like Dan Hooker ate a head kick in round 1 that I'm not sure most people could walk through. But Ignacio Bahamondes is going to throw a spinning heel kick or a pull counter. He's going to throw that knees from outside. One of these guys is got to get hurt badly in this fight, I would expect. I kind of feel like Ignacio Bahamondes is the fresher face with a little more gas in the tank. This is a pick'em price tag, -110 either side. It hurts my soul a little bit to pick against Jalin Turner, but I just think Ignacio is upwards trajectory, and that's what I want to lean on here.
I think that this is Jalin Turner's fight to lose, which he might. He might, but I think it's his fight to lose. I think that Bahamondes is an interesting guy. His numbers are excellent, by the way. We talked about guys having high strikes landed per minute ratios. His is 7.17, very, very high. He only absorbs 4.4, which, by the way, is also high, but you have just a really good positive differential. It's much narrower for Jalin Turner. 5.6 landed for 4.5 absorbed. So, you know, you're barely in a positive integer here for somebody who's very, very good. But he has fought much better competition, in my view. And Jalin Turner, if he's got a little bit of Ankalaev in him, which he just makes these weird decisions that you're like, dude, what the fuck are you doing? You know what I mean? Like, you're just like, you know, I would stop doing that. Like, you're clearly making a bad decision. But in terms of raw talent, identifying targets, by the way, a bit of a 2-inch reach advantage, which could be interesting here. It's not a huge one, but you know, both guys are kind of lengthy, so one being a little bit lengthier than the other one could be a bit of a decisive factor depending on how they fight. But I just feel like Turner is much more creative. I think I believe Turner has comprehensively better striking, and the numbers don't speak to this statistically, but I think relative to the competition they've faced, I think Turner takes less damage on the feet, a little harder to hit. And I certainly recognize that Bahamondes is in your face. He's definitely going to have cardio the whole time, and I think less error prone, which is a big problem for Turner. Turner's more error prone, but better. Bahamondes not as good, but doesn't just make boneheaded fucking calls. So it's a tough one. But because I think Turner's got more finesse and more upside, I'm going to lean with him on this one. I feel like when it comes to, you've heard me talk about this a few times tonight with Ruffy, with Bahamondes and Turner, with, who's the other guy earlier on the card? I forget who it was. The Petrosyan. Like, to what extent you can adapt, to what extent you have creative, you can see someone thinking through problems with their striking and making quick reactions, quick changes, quick reads, and really lording that over him. Turner, to me, the tape has shown me it does that a little bit better than Bahamondes. Both do it okay, but Turner seems to do it a little bit better for me. Again, this is something of a pick'em. I forget exactly what you said what the odds were. It's close. It's competitive.
It's a pick'em. Yeah.
I just feel like Turner has struggled more. He's also fought much better guys. And in those cases, came up a little bit short where maybe he shouldn't have, made an error that maybe he shouldn't have. But this is a good chance to get right. I think he will.
Okay. All right. So Luke and I on opposite sides here on this one. But hey, it's a pick'em for a reason. I think this is going to be a very competitive fight and could swing either direction here. That's going to be a fun one, man.
Great.
Yeah. No, I gotta do. I just
hope. My only hope is the referee doesn't fuck it up. That's it. Like, just let them be, guys. Let them.
They'll do everything they can to fuck it up. Which, by the way, PSA, guys. You know, speaking of our last week's card, we talked about try not to bet on fights that go the distance unless you really feel like you've got an edge or an angle, because the judges are doing everything they can to ruin some of these fights when they make it a full 15 minutes. So be careful this week. If you think this fight is going over, maybe think about where you're putting your money. Co-main event, we have got the rematch. Justin Gaethje takes on Rafael Fiziev. And geez, I always do that every time. He is not Brazilian. Rafael Fiziev.
Yeah, I do the same thing. Yeah.
I got the Hafas, but you know, Rafael dos Anjos is always the one that makes me get in that mode there. But yeah, so rematch. Fiziev coming in here on short notice because Justin Gaethje lost an opponent. We get the rematch. We have not seen Fiziev in a long, long time. If you guys remember, he fought Mateusz Gamrot back in 2023, and I think he like broke his leg kicking the elbow of Mateusz Gamrot, or so, just real fluky freak injury type of situation. Very disappointing to have him sidelined that long, but kind of making up for lost time, picking up right where he left off, coming back here in this fight. When these two fought, it was a very, very back and forth, very competitive fight, and it went to a decision, went the full distance here in 2023. Justin Gaethje was the slight underdog, plus 190-ish, I think, the first time they fought, and did go ahead and get his hand raised in that fight. But I know it was a contentious decision. A lot of people felt like it should have gone the other way. There was some back and forth discussion online after the fight was over. I didn't bet the fight last time around because I just feel like on any given night, whoever puts their best foot forward can win this fight. You know, the worry on this one for me, Luke, is Justin Gaethje's current state. You know, the Max Holloway KO of the year loss coming off that. How do you bounce back? You know, This isn't hockey where you get your ass kicked and then you come back and play your career best next game. I could see him being irreparably damaged from that kind of a knockout loss. He went through an absolute war, and he's been through many absolute wars. Eventually, that kind of shit's got to take its toll. Fiziev just seems like he's far more. He stays within himself. He's less prone to brawl. He makes it more of a technical fight. And if you can make him brawl, then I think Justin Gaethje is going to have the edge in that circumstance. But if Justin Gaethje is not able to force Fiziev into a brawl, then I think Fiziev will probably pick his shots a little better and be able to find his way to a revenge win here. So I will side with the ever so slight favorite, Rafael Fiziev. But again, another one where I just don't have any interest in betting. This one's going to be a banger of a fight to watch. I don't need money on this one to get excited about it.
Give me Fiziev. I like Fiziev in this one. I went back and I watched their first fight and prep for today's podcast to see, like, okay, I remember that Fiziev started strong, and boy, did he start strong. Holy shit. And then maintained pretty good through the second round, although there's some debate about that one. But then the third round kind of fell apart. So I was like, okay, let me see why did he fall apart? And the basic answer is he kind of gassed. And he ran out of ideas. So two things happened. One, he kind of slowed down just from output. That was one. And then secondly, he kept stepping into Gaethje, and Gaethje just beat him up with the jab. He kept timing the jab, timing it on the entries, timing it on his angle change, and just went over and over. And then, of course, what did you notice? Fiziev starts to get his head off the center line. So what does Gaethje do when the guy is now much more stationary, much easier to hit? Collar tie, and then he started feeding him uppercuts the whole time, right? So he had this incredible third round. So it wasn't for me that through, again, I realize that Gaethje ended up winning that fight, but I'm saying you could make an argument that through 2 rounds, Fiziev was able to perform quite well. This one is still set for 3 rounds, by the way, not a 5-rounder, given that it's a late notice. It's like all Fiziev has to do here, and I'm oversimplifying, obviously, but what I'm trying to point out is all he kind of has to do is not hang on per se, but just manage the resources on the outside when he's battering the legs and he's changing angles. I did remember, and the video confirmed it, Gaethje looked much bigger than him, which was kind of surprising. Fiziev almost looks like a 45er bumping up. Obviously, he's physical for the weight class, but, just naturally sized, not in that place. But I think he can do this. Now, the other thing I was looking at was in round 3, I'm like, okay, how much did Fiziev still land on him, and with what authority? Fiziev was still landing on him pretty well. It's just that he looked much more slowed down and was getting popped with that jab to the point where it was freezing him. And then the second and third attack would come around, and that's when the real problems would start. It's like, I'm not saying this guy's easy to beat, far from it. But to the point you raised, he's coming off of just an absolutely all-time knockout loss. That's just what it was. I mean, truly one of the best, but also worst knockouts I've ever seen. Face planted. There is absolutely no possible way he's the same after that. I'm not saying he's completely diminished. What I'm saying is, did he leave a piece of himself in the octagon that night? You bet your ass he did.
Yeah.
And on top of that, this is not a technically difficult thing for Fiziev to figure out. He already kind of had a good way of going about it. He just didn't manage his resources very well. This should be something he should be able to do. This was one of those fights that we had pinpointed. We were like, oh, Fiziev, Saryukian, you name it, all those guys with the V's and the Z's in their names, they were coming up at lightweight. They're going to push all the old generation out. And then Gaethje, the old bastard, was like, not on my watch, not today. Fair play to him. It was an amazing performance. But now Fiziev gets a second crack at it. If he is going to be anything, and I think he can be, this is it. This is the line in the sand. This is the time. You get a second crack to correct a mistake that is very correctable. I understand it's short notice. It's very correctable against a uniquely compromising time in Gaethje's career. If you can't win here, it's a fucking wrap for him as any kind of future title holder in this division. This is the line. I think he'll cross it.
I'm with you. I think he makes the series 1-1 here, corrects those mistakes, gets back on the horse, and this should be a great fight. This should be a great fight as long as it lasts, which is pretty much everything we say every time Justin Gaethje steps inside the cage. All right, guys, main event time. The moment you've all been waiting for. Me and my nemesis, Alex Pereira, takes on Magomed Ankalaev. And this one's tough, Luke, because I've been kind of downplaying both of these guys. You know, Magomed Ankalaev has this rabid fan base that just thinks he's the uncrowned king. This guy should have been champion 2 years ago in the UFC, and they won't be sold otherwise that he can't be just the greatest of all time at 205 pounds. And then
Dude,
you've got...
can we stop for just a second, if I may? It's your show, but if I may,
have at it.
I've said this before, and like, listen, I don't want to be one of these old dickheads who was like, everything was better in my day, because it wasn't. Like, a lot of things were not better in my day. Absolutely not at all. Like, there's so many things that are better, not least of which is, you know how great it is? I can just open up my fucking phone and watch Pride. You know what I mean? I can open up my phone. Oh, I want to see who won Strikeforce fucking heavyweight Grand Prix. I can do that on my motherfucking phone. That is clearly so much better now than it ever once was. But here's the reality. 10 years ago, at least at 205, Poatan is not a champion. Not even fucking close. You had, let's see, Prime Gustafson back then. You had Anthony Rumble Johnson. You had Dan Henderson. And I'm sorry, this is going to break some hearts. Phil Davis would run over Poatan. There's no doubt in my mind that was prime Phil Davis. To say nothing of Rashad Evans, to say nothing of Daniel Cormier, to say nothing of John Jones. Guys, he's not a champion at 205 in 2014 or 2015. It doesn't happen. I'm sorry. That doesn't mean he's not awesome, because he's awesome. That doesn't mean he's not exciting. Holy shit. It doesn't mean he's not one of the biggest stars the UFC has right now and that fans love him, deservedly, especially because, hello, he saved 2024. I can call all the good parts about him what they are, but I'm sorry, he's not a champion in this division, but for the fact it has substantially declined, and that's not his fault, but he's feasting off of it, and it's okay to notice it.
Luke, you're preaching to the choir. 205 got me into mixed martial arts. Forrest Griffin was my favorite fighter. Rampage versus Griffin, The Ultimate Fighter, was my all-time favorite season of the show, and that was the heyday of 205. Chuck Liddell, Rampage, Forrest Sugar, like all those guys. Lyoto Machida came after that. Like, we had this glorious golden age window where on any given night, one of those guys could be the champion. That's 135 now, and that's why bantamweight's the best damn division in the UFC right now. But that's what 205 was, and it's insane. I highly overestimated Jamal Hill, Yuri Prochazka. Like, these are the guys that I thought would be able to beat Poatan, and I massively overestimated what those guys were capable of doing. I've lost more money trying to bet against Alex Pereira than anybody on planet Earth, because I kind of identified a little bit of what you're talking about, where I was like, he's just not well-rounded. He's not there. He's old. He's been through wars. He's been knocked out. That left hand is a cheat code. And I did not expect his physicality and his knockout power to translate at 205 the way it has. I can't tell you how many times when somebody's changed a weight class and I've gone, yeah, but they hit really hard, it'll be fine. And then they don't have the same pop on their hands when they move up a weight class. The guys are bigger, they're stronger, they're used to people with bigger power, and it just doesn't affect anybody the same way. Alex Pereira is a bit of a freak of nature. Now, like you mentioned, the bar has been dropped at 205 to some extent, but still, the fact that you moved up 30 pounds and that left hand is still nuclear and people have to avoid it at all costs to be able to stay in a fight, it's insanity. So you guys would think that Alex Pereira has beaten me into submission at this point, that I would just be a nonstop believer at this point because he's done nothing but prove me wrong to this point. And I did obviously pick him to beat Khalil Roundtree, which if that tells you anything about the state this division is in, Khalil Roundtree is getting a title shot in 2024. I still think that Alex Pereira is very, very beatable. Now, Magomed Ankalaev, I just don't know if he's that guy because he is not Khabib. He's not the wrestler guy that he claims to be. He's not the wrestler people imagine him to be. He's kind of a boxer, and he, similarly to some of the other people we've talked on this card, Luke, he has this weird ability to make egregious errors. Like, he just does stupid shit sometimes. He went to a draw with Jan Blachowicz, and now I know a lot of people are going to be like, well, he won that fight, but the fact that it ever had an opportunity to go to the draw, like, a real champion at this weight class doesn't let that happen. You know what I mean? He makes really goofy mistakes. I feel like he gets a little overexcited when he's in boxing range, and he can be had when he's in tight boxing. And that's a death knell against a guy like Alex Pereira with a left hand. So Magomed Ankalaev can come out, shoot a takedown on Alex Pereira, put him on his back. That's great. What does he do if he doesn't finish him in the first round? Yeah, this guy got armbarred by Paul Craig. Back in 2018.
Triangle armbar.
I'm sorry, triangle armbar. I thought I was the hottest shit on planet Earth because back in 2018, I had a Paul Craig by submission ticket the night that he pulled off the greatest comeback in UFC history, submitting Magomed Ankalaev with 2 seconds left on the clock. I cashed a ticket that night. So I have some beef, some long-standing beef with Magomed Ankalaev, and we'll never forget that moment. It was absolute insanity. But again, it just shows you the level of slip-up, the oops that this guy has built in him. I think Alex Pereira is low-key chinny. Like we kind of talked about a little bit before. I don't know that he can take too much damage from some of these guys at this weight class if they're landing with force, with impact. He was able to take some shots with Khalil Roundtree and Yuri Prohaska. So maybe I need to back off on that train just a little bit. I'm not sure who hits harder, Magomed Ankalaev or Yuri. I would suspect Yuri, but maybe I'm wrong in that assumption.
I think Yuri.
I think I'm going to pick Alex Pereira to do the damn thing again, continue being a national superstar, light the internet on fire, let the Chama memes roll. But you guys, I'm not going to curse all of you. I'm not going to put my money on Alex Pereira because if I put a $5 bet on Alex Pereira on Saturday, Ankalaev will nuke him on the first punch he throws. Like that's how this kind of thing works. I've been betting against the guy for years now. If I flip sides on you, I will ruin the party for everybody. So I'm not doing it. For your sake, for my sake, for your cousin's sake, who knows nothing about MMA, I will not be putting my money on Alex Pereira, but I will pick him to left hook Larry Magomed Ankalaev on Saturday.
Man, Ankalaev is a fucking donk. I mean, where do you even start? Getting triangled to the last fucking second against Paul Craig. That dumbass foul on on Johnny Walker. Mm-hmm. How about getting lit up like a fucking Christmas tree for an extended amount of time before being like, oh, maybe I should take Blachowicz down to the ground because this is a number one contender fight, and then you fucking botched it, which is why you're only getting the fight here during the middle of Ramadan, which cannot be fucking easy, by the way. You can only eat and drink basically when the sun is down. Like, you're here in part because of luck, in part because of skill and what you've done, but also because of fuck ups left and right, dude. Like, he does not have discipline and bearing to make good decisions. And for that reason, it's like, dude, I look at him and I'm like, does this guy have the skills to win this fight? There's simply no question in my mind. The skills. He has he could pull it off if, he had the right mental, I'm not sure what the word would be, like the right framework, and he stuck to the game plan, and the game plan was good, and he executed. Can he execute on that? I think he could. I just have no confidence in him. I have no confidence in him when things go bad. He's going to recognize it and then make a course correction. I just don't see that. It's not like I think that Poaton's got he's going to have great takedown defense. It might be good enough. To your point, in the first Yuri fight, Yuri got him down and was kind of on top of him for a little bit. Didn't do a lot with it, but he did get him down and probably won that round. Couldn't do it at all in the second fight. So clearly his takedown defense, Poaton's takedown defense, has gotten better. And maybe it will be good enough here or whatever. It's not like I think he's going to he's going to show everyone what a great wrestler he is. No, even if he wins this and he has to fight Tom Aspinall, Aspinall's going to blow the doors off of him, right? We're not blind. But I think it's probably good enough. And Ankalaev, again, if he got his hand raised, would I be like, oh, how did that happen? Not necessarily. But if he fumbles it on the way to Poaton getting his hand raised, you'd be like, right, there he is. You'd be doing the Leo DiCaprio meme. That guy. You'd be doing that right in that moment. So for that reason, I'm going to take Poaton. I think Poaton. And by the way, one other thing, we're talking about, he's only been here 3.5 years and, they fast-tracked him to a title, which is true. But in some sense, they've been kind of dragging their feet to make the Ankalaev fight. We thought there's been a couple of times, even after the Blachowicz incident, where they might have circled back and made it, and they didn't. So it's the same kind of scenario, different ways, but a lot of people complained when Conor McGregor got the Dennis Seaver fight because the Frankie Edgar fight was kind of sitting there and they were like, yeah, we're just going to give him Dennis Seaver. And people complained. And I thought to myself, okay, it's obvious they did not give Conor the toughest fight when they gave him Dennis Seaver, but they gave it to him for a lot of reasons, promotional muscle, the whole 9 yards. But it was clear they were buying time. Because once you got elevated to the next level, there was no going back. It was the Chad Mendez's, it was the Aldos, it was you name it. And of course, he did really well. But you get what I'm saying. Like once he elevated, they couldn't soft play it anymore. Okay, they can't soft play Poatan anymore. This is where we are. But he's had a good long while to get ready. I think that will be enough.
Yeah. And I'm glad you mentioned that, Luke, because I think that's just hitting the nail on the head here. And that's part of the reason why the Khalil Roundtree fight happened. It was get with Glover, work on your takedown defense, work on your get-up game. We'll throw you a softball in between. It was absolutely a stopgap to build to this Magomed fight because you know what? You go back 2 years and Magomed Ankalaev, that's the money guy, right? Like Russia's taken over. You want a big, scary, hairy Russian beast with gold wrapped around his waist in the UFC. That's the ticket right there. Poatan turned that whole narrative around in 2024. This guy with gold wrapped around his waist, he's the star of the UFC right now. He is everything to them. Could you imagine what would last year have looked like without this guy knocking people's heads off? It was abysmal. The entire year was hard to stomach. If not for this guy hyping every other pay-per-view event, it would have really been rough. So
dude, him and Topuria are 5 UFC events that year. Consider what you would have without them. It'd be insane, you know?
Yeah. So I'm with you. I do think the UFC has a investment potentially here with Alex Pereira and being able to shuck some of these takedowns and keep this thing on the feet. So glad we're both kind of lining up on him. And like I said, I'll bless you, my gamblers, and not put my money and keep the Clint curse off of Alex Pereira once again this weekend. Got to shout out my guy Pepe. He says, is it Ramadan or is it Chamadan?
Chamadan, yes.
Pepe, bro, you gotta stop. That's good. All right, guys, that is UFC 313. And I almost forgot, I do have to shout out this episode of the Die Hard MMA podcast was brought to you by Spectation Sports. Make sure you guys check them out. It is alternative to Fight Pass. Make sure you're getting on over there. They've got an awesome event coming up here this week, actually. Fusion Fight League. And Justin James is actually making his bare knuckle debut in the main event. So gonna be a fun event. Promo code Clint or promo code DieHard will get you a 20% off discount when you guys get signed up. Use the link in the description below. Luke, my guy, I want to say thank you so much. I know we ran a little long. We were having fun. Okay, I apologize. But it was a blast, man. Always love having you on the show. If you have anything coming up, shows, sponsors, anything you want to shout out, my guy, floor is yours. Go for it.
Yeah, just follow me on YouTube, youtube.com/Luke Thomas. Tons of good stuff there. Be on the lookout. And thanks for having me, dude. I appreciate it. Enjoy the fights, boys.
Absolutely. Love having you, Luke. Thank you again very much, you guys. I have no bets this week so far, but you know how that goes over the course of the week. Total Takedown Thursday, undefeated post-weigh-in show Friday, and I will get with my guy, Andrew from Superbook Sports. We'll figure out a time to get the Sharp Action Report set up here for you as well. Be good, everybody. Kick some ass out there gambling, and good luck. Let's roll.